In this video, we are going to be going over order of operations, which has traditionally been known as PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, where we have parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. In this version, we are actually going to go with GEMDAS, and this is just where we're changing parentheses to grouping, because grouping now is going to be expanding to a lot of different types of brackets and grouping. Sometimes it is with symbols such as parentheses or brackets or even absolute value brackets, and other times it's going to be understood as a locational grouping, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. Grouping, again, is parentheses, brackets, and we'll talk about those locational. It looks like this, or the square brackets, and usually these are used during PEMDAS when you have several layers of brackets, and we'll go through how we are going to walk through those as well. We have absolute values, which we'll talk about later, not during this video because we haven't gotten into negative numbers, but this comes into play when we start working with negative numbers. So obviously if it's inside of one of these brackets, we are going to do it first. That's the obvious form of grouping. The less obvious is something similar to this, and these are just two examples. If you have 8 plus 7 divided by 5, and now that we're getting into these bigger operations, this, what we would have called a fraction line, or it would have been 8 plus 7 over 5, is really going to be called divided by now, because fractions are just unfinished division problems. So this is divided by, go ahead and get that written down so we remember, and that's this line here. We could also write it something like this, 15 over or divided by 2 plus 3. Again, this is divided by or over, but it means the same thing. Doesn't matter which wording you use for it. With that said, we can't actually do the division, which comes as one of our early steps, until either of the additions are done. So while normally you do your division first, you can't. So these are understood, or invisible math is what we call it. These are understood groupings where there's not actually a symbol. So this is something we have to watch out for. If you can't do the math first, you're going to have to make the adjustment there. So it's something you've got to get used to. Exponents are next. This is when we have our powers. Those are going to be anything that looks something like this. You also could, if you had something like 2 plus 3 raised to the second, you'd have to do the inside part first, and then the whole thing after it's done would be squared. Those are the type of exponents they're talking about. There's lots of different ways they can show up. These are just two quick examples. We know that this is multiply, and we know that this one is no, that's not how we spell divide. Divide, let's get that spelled right, and I know it's going to be a little bit smudged now that I've had to erase. Now these two right here are actually done as one step. It's multiply and divide, and it's from left to right, okay? It's not do multiplication and then division. It's both of them from left to right, just like we read. So no matter what they are, we would follow from left to right, and whichever one we hit first is the one we do first. This is the same thing with adding and subtracting. Okay, they're still going to be A and S, and it's going to be left to right. So really, we only have 4 steps. We have 1, which is grouping, and I'm just going to write the letter. 2 is the exponent. 3 is multiplication and division from left to right. And then we're going to do 4, which is add, subtract, again from left to right. So there's really only 4 steps to the GEMDAS process, or order of operations. But with that said, you may have to do some of these multiple times. So you have to make sure you clear each checkpoint before you move to the next. So all of our grouping must be done first. All of our exponents must be done next, and they have to all be complete before we want to move on, with the exception of when we have to do some of these invisible math groupings that does get a little more confusing. But let me write one out. I'm going to try and make sure I don't make a mistake, because another day I actually tried to go into negative numbers. We're not working with negative numbers yet. So let's see. We have 3 plus, let's open parentheses, 2 plus 3 squared minus, we'll say 15 divided by 2 plus 3, just to get one of those ones that have the invisible grouping in there, times, oh, I don't even know. Let's not do times yet. That I've just realized that may throw us into a negative that we don't want. Let's do plus 3, and then times 1. I know that seems kind of silly, but at least we can get the process down, okay? So when we do this, of course, the first thing we need to look at is our grouping. Well, our first grouping as we're going left to right is, of course, going to be inside of these parentheses. So if we do 2 plus 3, that is going to equal 5, and we have solved that. I like to, by the way, draw a line through the things that I've completed to show that we're not bringing them down. After that, we do need to bring down our square because we have not used it. We'll also bring down our 3 plus because we haven't done it. Now looking at this, when we say minus, now 15 isn't a grouping, but we know from when we spoke up here that the 2 plus 3 has to be done before anything else can. So 2 plus 3 equals 5. So we can cross the 2 plus 3. That'll be plus 3 times 1. And this is our new expression, okay? I know it's a little hard to read there. Just bear with me. I might zoom in a little bit. But now we can say with confidence that our grouping is done. We can go over here and do a check mark. There's no more grouping that needs to be handled. Now looking at our exponent, we do have one here. 5 raised to the second, which technically right now, because it's only one number, we don't need those parentheses anymore. We could technically get rid of them and just write 5 squared, raised to the second power. This is going to be 25. 5 times 5, as we learned in the other video, is 25. We marked that out. So it's going to be 3 plus 25 minus 15 divided by 5 plus 3 times 1. All right? No other exponents. We can say, hey, that's done. Great. Wonderful. Now we're going to move on to multiplication and division. And again, we're going to go left to right. So this is addition. This is subtraction. But we have these two. This is divided by. So 15 divided by 5 equals 3. All right. And then we can cancel this out. We're going to bring everything else down because we don't, well, no, we don't. We got to go over here. So we're not going to add anything, but we do have a 3 times 1, which really is just 3. Correct? So we can bring our sign down, but that is finished. We can bring our sign down here. That goes there. We can bring down the 25. Okay? We can bring down the 3 plus, because none of that has been done yet. So we just bring everything down. We just keep bringing it down until we use it, okay? When we cross it out, that is when we've used it, all right? So now we can say that, hey, we finished all the multiplication and division. All of these are add, subtract, add. So we can say, yes, we're done with the multiplication and division. I'm going to slide this up just a little bit because we're starting to get hard to see. Now, again, we're going left to right. It doesn't matter that it's going to be in different orders, but we're going to do 3 plus 5 is 28. Cross that out. Minus 3 plus 3. And I like, when I'm starting out with these, it's really great to only do one at a time. Don't try to overdo it, especially if they touch each other. These two were being done independently, so I could do them together. Same with these groupings. They weren't affecting each other, but because this is 3 plus 25 minus 3 minus plus 3, it can get confusing. So do them one at a time. So 28 minus 3, so we're actually taking the 3 away. These two will equal 25 plus 3. Correct? Does everybody see where I'm going with that? And then now we have 25 plus 3, so the final answer, or value, since this is expression, the value of our expression equals 28. And that comes back from up here. And it looks like a lot. But I really did break it down. Eventually these are going to go a lot faster. But you can see how this can shift very quickly with grouping. If I had put in extra grouping marks, that might have said, oh, well, I need to do an extra set of parentheses here, it's going to affect the order because you have to go by parentheses first or groupings first. And I'll do another one later that has multiple layers of grouping that affect each other to show you how that puts it out of order. But this gives you the step-by-step walkthrough of the order of operations based on how you should walk through the information. And there's kind of the whole, trying to get my paper turned properly. There's the whole thing where you have all of your steps here, the different types of brackets, what exponents could look like here, different types of invisible grouping, how we go left to right with both of these, and how we can just do it in 4 steps instead of 6, because we really have to go left to right. I hope that helps break it down a little bit better.